In this video, we're going to talk about how to go about selecting multiple files or ranges of files inside of a folder window. Let's go ahead and begin by selecting a file, and you'll see that if we select that file, it gets highlighted in blue, and then if we select another file, then that file gets highlighted in blue, and the first file is now unselected. And that's fine if you just need to work with one single file at a time. But many times we need to be able to delete or copy or move multiple files all at one time. And moving files one at a time can be a little bit redundant. So let's talk about how to go about selecting multiple files. Let's go ahead and click on the ostrich file here. And let's say that I wanted to now also include the file of the baby in my selection. Well, at this point, after I've selected the ostrich, I'm going to press and hold the Control key on the keyboard, and then I'm going to left click on my mouse and highlight the baby. Now let's say I wanted to go ahead and also include the dog inside of my selection. While still holding down the Control key, I would again left click on the dog. And now let's say I wanted to go ahead and include the Taj Mahal in my selection. I would then hold down the Control key again, and I would select the Taj Mahal. And you can see now we have all of these selected. Now I can do just about anything with these four pictures that I could have done with just one file selected. Let's see how that works. I'm going to go ahead and right click here and create a new folder. Now let's go ahead and select some files again. And you'll see I have all four of these selected. I can now left click on any one of those files, and you'll see how the number 4 appears in the center of the file that I have selected. That indicates that I have all 4 of these files selected right now. I can then move all 4 of those files into this folder. And you see how it didn't copy them into the folder, it basically cut and pasted them into the folder because they're not inside this folder any longer. Now let's say that you wanted to go ahead and copy them into the folder and not remove them from this area. The way you would accomplish that is you would hold down the Control key and select the images that you wanted to move, and you would right click instead of left click. Okay, so I'm holding down the right button on my mouse, and then I'm going to drop them into this folder. And you can see here, it then asks me, do I want to copy them here or move them here? Well, a while ago, I moved them. I basically cut and pasted them. In this case, I just want to copy them, and so it's giving me that option. So I'm going to go ahead and hit copy. And you can see that I still have all 4 of these images inside of this folder, and then when I go into this folder, they're here as well. The next thing you'd want to learn is how to select a range of files. Let's go ahead and select the dog with the funny teeth. And let's say that I wanted to select all the pictures between the dog and let's say this other dog. So what I would do is I would press and hold down the Shift key and then click on this dog, and you'll see that all of those images were selected. Now I can do the same thing that I did a while ago. I can go ahead and left click on any one of these images, and you can see that 11 appear in the middle. That indicates that I have all 11 of these selected, and I can then move them over here and drop them. Now it's telling me that I've already got one of these files in here because you'll remember a while ago I went ahead and copied some in instead of pasting them. So we have some duplicates now. I'm going to go ahead and hit move and replace. Now let's go ahead and talk about how to select a range of photos like we just did. Let's say we're going to click on this one, and then we're going to hit the Shift key, and we're going to click on this picture of the dog car. And now let's say I decided I don't want the picture of this car here. I want to go ahead and press the Control key, and I want to click the car. And you'll see how it deselected that car. You see how these are blue, and you'll see how that the car is now kind of a whitish color here. That means it's been deselected. And so now if I were to right click on these photos and drag them over here and click move, then you'll see that the car is still here, because I had deselected it by pressing the control key. And so it's important to know that you can select ranges and then deselect surgically by using the control key, or you could just use your control key to select numerous photos and then use your control key to unselect one that you decided you did not want selected any longer. I would like to also show you another little neat trick that'll help you clean up your files and make them a little bit easier to work with. Many times you have tons of different file names in here and you just want them to kind of look the same. In this case, I have some named sample image and some named video. So let's go ahead and use this little drop down right here to go ahead and change these files into either a list or a details view. Let's go ahead and choose details just for fun. Details is going to give us the date and the type and the size, whereas list would just give us the image names. Let's go ahead and I guess stick with the list in this case. So let's say that I wanted to make all these have the same file numbers. We can use the control or the shift mechanisms that we just talked about to select all of these files. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and use the shift key and select that entire range. Now inversely, I could go ahead and just hit Control A. Control A in Windows means all. So let's go ahead and hit Control A, and you'll see now I've selected everything in the folder. But I didn't need that folder right here selected, so now I could use my control key and just deselect that. And so now what I wanted to show you with regard to renaming files is that once you have all the files in a folder selected, all you have to do to rename every single one of them at one time is to right-click on any one of the files that you want to start the renaming process with. Let's say that I wanted to go ahead and start with this one. I would go ahead and right-click, and then I would hit Rename, and then you'll see how it looks like I'm just renaming this file, right? But I'm not. I'm renaming every single one of them. Let's go ahead and just name it with the client's name, Smith, John. And I'm going to hit enter, and you'll see it renamed every single one of the files Smith, John, and then in parentheses it has a 1 or a 2. And the reason it's possible for these files to have exactly the same name is because those two files are different file types. This is a video and this is an image. Now, the next thing I want to show you is something that you need to be aware of. And you may have noticed this when you're trying to clean up your desktop, because that's when it usually happens to most people and they don't realize why. Let's go ahead and let's hit Control A. Okay, and now what we could do is to introduce you to another function in Windows, and that is the Control X. Control X means cut. Now I then could just click on my desktop here, and then I can introduce you to another Windows function, which is Control V. Control V, like Victor, is paste. And you'll see how I've cut and I've pasted all those files onto my desktop. Let's go ahead and introduce you now to another Windows function called Control Z, like zebra. And what that means is undo. Yeah, you see how I hit Control Z and it put those files right back into this folder because I undid it. Now let's go ahead and hit Control Z again. And you'll see how it's undoing several of the last operations. Remember, we had renamed these files with the client's name. Now I'm going to introduce you to yet another Windows function, and that's Control Y. Control Y is the opposite of Control Z. Control Y is redo. So I'm going to hit Control Y, Control Y, Control Y, Control Y, and you see now that they're pasted right back onto my desktop. Now, the last thing I'm going to introduce you to, I'm going to first hit Control Z and put them back into my folder. I'm going to click inside the folder and hit Control A. Now I'm going to hit Control C for copy. Then I'm going to left click on my desktop, and then I can I could right click, right? But that just takes a little bit more time than I'd want to spend, and I could hit paste. It's easier just to use the Control V, which is for paste. And so these functions that I'm showing you are very important for you to learn because of the fact that you can use these functions throughout Windows. Whether you're working inside of an email client or you're working with just about any kind of file in Windows, these principles are the same. And so now I want to show you something that's a little bit dangerous that happens to people when they're trying to clean their desktop up. They have all these icons on their desktop, and so they start selecting them. And then after they selected a whole bunch of them, what ends up happening is they'll click on one and they'll kind of drag it just a little bit. And when you click a file and just drag it slightly while you're holding the Control key down, what it does is it makes a copy. Now, instead of cleaning up your desktop, you just cluttered it even worse than it was. And so that happens when you select a file, hold down the Control key, and then just barely move that file a little bit, and it will make a copy. And so that's what's happening to you sometimes when you're trying to clean your desktop up, and you accidentally hold down the Control key, and it does that. And let's go into StoryBook, where we're going to work with these files in a very similar way that we worked with them inside of our file folders. Now, we don't have functionality for copy and paste, so you can use your Shift key. You can select multiple files, just like we did in Windows. Okay, but what you can't do is you can't hit your copy and your paste. It doesn't work inside of StoryBook like that. We're going to be using drag and drop. So let's go ahead and click a file, and now we're going to use the Control key, and we're going to select several files, and we're going to then drag all 5 of those files into a room. Inversely, we can select a file, use our Shift key, hold down the Shift key, and then left click, and you see it selects a range, and then we decide we don't want to use the file of the stairs here, so we're going to hit our Control key, and we're going to left click and unselect that one, and then we're going to left click and drag all of those files into a room. And that is how you select multiple files and deselect files inside of StoryBook.